How are we doing, everybody? UFC Thoughts here, and today I'm going to be going over my picks and breakdown for every fight on UFC 308 Topuria vs. Holloway on October 26th, 2024. Timestamps in the comments below. Let's get right into it with the first fight of 13. We start with Rinat Fakhretdinov versus Carlos Leal. I'm going to go with Rinat Fakhretdinov on this one. Carlos has taken this fight on about 5 or 6 days' notice, I believe, so I imagine he's had to fly around the world just to get here. But who knows, maybe Cameron Smotherman, you saw what he did last week, right? Jake Hadley? Sorry. But yeah, I think Rinat Fakhretdinov, his skill set is just, I think, going to work very well against Carlos Leal. A lot of what Carlos does is pressure. A lot of the things that he does well is pressure. But I think we've already seen people try to pressure Rinat Fakhretdinov, and it doesn't really go all that well. I mean, Nicholas Dalby did a solid job at it, but I don't think Carlos Leal is as good as a Nicholas Dalby. You know what I mean? I think Rinat Fakhretdinov's grappling and threat of the takedown is going to be an equalizer in this matchup, because Carlos Leal does have decent takedown defense, but I think that Rinat Fakhretdinov is undeniably very strong. He's very strong in grappling positions, and I've seen Carlos Leal get flat on his back. If Rinat Fakhretdinov gets on top of you, it's kind of hard to get back up. And Rinat also hits very hard, which is something I do have to take into account. Has Carlos ever been knocked out? No, he's been subbed once. Who was the boy that subbed him? It was Tim Ruberg. All right, Tim. 42. Carlos fought in the PFL and LFA, a couple times even Bellator. But besides beating, he didn't even beat Sadabusi. He didn't even beat him. The Swedish Denzel Washington is that dude's nickname. Wow. What a fucking name. I'm getting off track, Jesus. I just think Rinat Fakhretdinov, he's got power in his hands. He is a little awkward on the feet, which I think could give a technical striker like Carlos Leal a bit of issues, where Carlos is trying to be uber technical and keep his hand placement ready. Rinat Fakhretdinov's throwing fucking standing back fists and fucking hammer fists. I think it's going to kind of deter a guy like Carlos Leal from walking forward, and the takedowns as well are going to deter Carlos from pressuring as much, which is his main weapon, is his pressure and cardio. I think Rinat Fakhretdinov could bank the first 2 rounds, and Carlos usually does have decent cardio, but I think since it's short notice, since he's going to have to fly around the world, since he's not even going to have a full camp, I'm almost certain that he's not going to have as good of cardio as he usually does, so I think he'll probably gas out. I don't think Rinat finishes Carlos. If he does, it'll be by submission, but I'll go Rinat Fakhretdinov unanimous decision. I'll go 30-27. We move to Ismail Naurdiev versus Bruno Silva. I'm going to go with Ismail Naurdiev on this one. A little tricky. Ismail, he was 2-2 in the UFC. They cut him back in 2020. Since then, he's had a couple fights on the regionals. He's only gone 4-3 in those fights, and he's been finished in all 3 of his losses. But the guy he is losing to are 17-2, 22-9-1. All right, so that guy's not as good. And then 20-7. He's losing to a lot of veterans, and he can definitely lose to Bruno Silva, because in one of those fights, a straight punch is what got him down to the ground, and then subsequent follow-up shots. But if I'm being totally honest, I'm not very happy with Bruno Silva, the middleweight, not the flyweight. The flyweight's pretty cool, but the middleweight Bruno Silva, as of right now, I'm very tentative to pick him in a fight, just because he legit kind of got bitched around by Chris Weidman in his last fight. And I understand the eye pokes played a factor, but on the striking and on the feet, head kicks and body kicks were landing by fucking Chris Weidman. I think Ishmael's quicker than Chris, and Bruno Silva is pretty quick, but he allowed Chris to outspeed him in moments, and Chris isn't even faster than him. That doesn't even make any sense what I just said, but if you watch the fight, you'll understand what I'm saying. He was beating him with a punch a lot of the time. Ever since the Alex Pereira fight, Bruno Silva, besides the fucking Brad Tavares fight for some reason, literally Bruno Silva is just losing, but then he knocks out Brad Tavares, and then he's just back to losing. That fight legit makes no fucking sense, by the way. One of the biggest flukes in recent memory is when he knocked out Brad Tavares. But you look I genuinely think Alex Pereira took a lot out of Bruno Silva. I think he's got a lot of PTSD on the feet now. He's not willing to exchange other than when he's fighting Brad Tavares for some reason. He's very loopy. Bruno Silva used to be regarded as kind of a more slick and more potent striker, but as of right now, he's very, very sloppy, man, and I'm not a huge fan of that. And honestly, I think Ismail Naurdiev has some okay offensive grappling too, to where he might be able to get to the ground on Bruno Silva, because we've seen Bruno Silva is willing to exchange in the grappling sense, even though he isn't really that good at it. I think Ismail Naurdiev could make Bruno Silva pay for some of these mistakes, get some trips in the clinch, or maybe just double leg, and Bruno Silva might be able to go down. I mean, what's Bruno Silva's takedown defense? What are we looking at here? Yeah, I forgot the website's fucking stupid. Hold up. Bruno Silva. This one. I mean, 60% takedown defense. Not that bad, but Ishmael's alright. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Wait, that's Bruno. That's the flyweight. What? That's the flyweight Bruno Silva. What? They don't even got... Dude, this website is so ass. Hold up. What is the actual Bruno Silva's? 74, alright. It's better than what the other Bruno Silva's is. But he also eats a lot of shots. His defense on the feet is poop. He's kind of a headhunter. Ismail actually mixes it up to the body. I think he's just an overall more crisp striker, I'll say. He's also got that divisional skill advantage. He is a welterweight moving up. So, Bruno Silva's kind of poop. So we move to Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. This one's tricky. I'll go with Farid Basharat, but I think this fight's going to be very close. Victor Hugo had a very weird debut. He beat Pedro Falcao. From what I remember, I think Pedro Falcao had a lot of success in the clinch department with a guy like Victor Hugo. And what I mean by that is that Victor allowed himself to get held against the fence, or didn't allow himself. He really couldn't get off the fence for large portions of that fight. But Victor Hugo on the feet is very scary. He's very calm and collected. He kind of stalks his opponents. But I think that, just like I said, I think the clinch and ground game is going to really benefit a guy like Farid Basharat. I don't think he's going to be able to get down Victor Hugo a ton, because Victor Hugo's takedown defense is mostly perfect. I mean, he defends single leg and double legs very well. It's the trips that really give him some hindrance. But Farid Basharat, most of his weapons are with singles and doubles. He rarely goes for trips. I've seen him do a couple of trips. I think he got Clayton Rodriguez with a trip in the first minute of their fight at UFC Paris. But the striking is going to be very, very weird to me, because I think Farid is quicker than Victor, because Victor is kind of slow. Not slow, but he's a bit slower for a bantamweight, but he also packs a mean fucking punch. But I think Farid Basharat's very fast. He's very fast. He gets his legs up quick. He kicks very hard, kicks very quick. I think his leg kicks are going to be able to play a part. I mean, most of what Farid does throw is, leg kicks. He does a lot of kicks to the leg. It's one of his main weapons, in fact. Or just his kicks in general, should I say. Farid is mostly kicks. He rarely throws his hands. When he does, it's mostly just ones and twos. But I've always said that I think Farid is better than Javid Basharat, just because I think Javid is a little squirrely. He's very, his hands are very, jumpy. I think Farid's actually better than him just because I think he can actually land stuff on the feet that's meaningful. I think his head kicks are very good, and I think Victor Hugo does sometimes relax in the cage. When I said he's calm to a T. When he's retreating, he does the thing that Matt Frevola does where his hands drop and he's just kind of running against the cage. And that's another thing, is that Victor Hugo gets pushed against the fence a lot. He allows himself to, at least. He's a bigger guy. His gas tank isn't insanely great. I mean, it's good, But, I mean, Pedro Falcao on short notice was pushing a heavy pace on Victor Hugo, and Victor Hugo started to slow down quite a bit. I think Farid Basharat's cardio is pretty good. I think he's going to be able to push a pace for a hard 15 minutes. And I think I really liked Farid's performance against Taylor Lapilus. While some parts were boring, I think that performance is pretty good considering what Taylor Lapilus has been able to do since then. So, yeah, I'll go Farid Basharat, unanimous decision. I'll go 29-28. I think one of these rounds, maybe the first round, is where Victor Hugo is going to be able to let off most of his damage because that's the round where he's going to be more fresh. They're both dry. Maybe he's going to be able to reverse Farid Basharat. Maybe he's going to defend takedowns more. But I think when Farid starts to get the takedowns, when he starts to get the trips, it's just going to happen easier and easier and easier. So, yeah. We move to Kennedy and Nzechukwu versus Chris Barnett. I'm going to go with Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Yeah, Chris Barnett hasn't fought in how long? How long ago was that fight that he had? It wasn't against fucking Jake Collier, 2022? He's had 4 canceled fights since then. I'm pretty sure all of them were because he withdrew. Oh no, Waldo Cortez Acosta pulled out of their fight, but yeah, I don't know. He withdrew out of like 3 of them. So Kennedy's going to have a significant height and reach advantage at heavyweight. Kennedy can be patient and dumb sometimes. We saw that in the OSP fight, but I think that's because he was fearful and wary of OSP just because OSP is a pretty big dude. Chris Barnett is just short and fat, and he hasn't fought in a while. He hardly lands punches. Kennedy honestly could make this a clinch masterclass like we seen Martin Budai do with Chris Barnett, where he kind of just held him against the fence and kind of like kneed him a bunch to the body and beat him up. But also I think Kennedy might just piece him up on the feet. He's going to have a fucking 8-inch reach advantage. I don't even know if Chris Barnett's going to be able to hit Kennedy because he has like a fucking 8-inch height disadvantage in this fight. Chris Barnett is also taking this on short notice. I know he was fighting or training for a camp. Was it 2 weeks ago? He was supposed to fight Junior Tafa. But, you know, I don't really care. I love Chris Barnett. I think everyone loves him. Everyone loves the fat man who can do flips and shit and do spinny wheel kicks. Is he going to spinning wheel kick knock out Kennedy and Nzechukwu? No, he's not. Kennedy's just going to jab his face off. It's not like Chris is going to shoot a bunch of takedowns and get them. Kennedy, his takedown defense is pretty good. The biggest weakness Kennedy has is his chin, but he's actually moving up a weight class, so he doesn't have to drain himself more. He was a pretty big dude for light heavyweight. He probably had to cut quite a bit of weight. So I think we're going to see probably one of the better versions of Kennedy that we've seen. Also, Kennedy can grapple. It's another thing. He can actually grapple a little bit. Kind of, we saw that against Ion Cutelaba. And Ion Cutelaba's wrestling is all right. So I'll go Kennedy and Nzechukwu. I'll go second round finish. I'll go sub. I think he'll be able to sub Chris Barnett. We move to Abos Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. This one's tricky. I'll go with Bruno Ferreira. I do think that Abos can definitely win this fight. Just because Bruno Ferreira, we've seen him get chinned in the UFC by Nursultan Ruziboev. We've seen him get taken down before, and Abos in his last fight against Worley Alves showed a pretty solid top game on the ground, especially against a guy like Worley Alves. Bruno Ferreira, I just like his pressure. I like him as a fighter. I think that he's the type of guy that can finish Abos Magomedov, that type of that pocket presence that he has. I mean, Bruno Ferreira, if he's able to knock out Gregory Rodriguez RoboCop with one fucking punch, and it didn't even look like a hard punch. He literally flatlined him with like a very, like, not even great. Was it a left or right hook? But it wasn't even a hook. It was like a straight punch. It just boom on the button. But I do think that Abos can do well on the feet because we've seen other people do well on the feet. I mean, Dustin Solsfus was actually landing some stuff on Bruno Ferreira because he is that wild. But I think that wildness is going to help him because we've seen in the moments where Worley Alves was wild against Abos Magomedov, that's where you're going to have success against a guy like Abos because he tries to be so technical. He feints the up kick. He has so many teeps to the body, teeps to the face. That's his whole game. And his straight punches, of course. But his whole game is based on precision striking. Bruno Ferreira is the complete opposite. He ain't fucking precise. He's just in there to fucking knock you out. And I think that's going to get a bus in a weird mindset, and he's going to be running back. And I think Bruno Ferreira is going to clip him in the first round and drop him and knock him out. I mean, who knocked out A-Bus in the first round in the PFL? Lewis Taylor. He's 19-4. Okay. This guy's pretty good. He hasn't fought since then. Is he alive? He's 45 years old. Holy shit. That was like his retirement fight. But also, you know, A-Bus does have a win over like Sauda BC. You know, he's a good fighter. And honestly, I think the ground game, if he wants to beat Bruno Ferreira, he's going to have to take him down, is what his game plan is going to have to be. He's going to have to mix in the takedowns with his striking. And honestly, his cardio looks better when he's grappling. When he's striking full on, his cardio looks poop. But when he's grappling most of the time, it actually looks fine. I think Bruno Ferreira is going to be able to stuff some of the takedowns, though. What's a Bruno Ferreira takedown defense looking like? 60. Yikes, not the greatest, but you know, hey, he might get taken down. But you know what? Fuck it. I'm already in this deep. I think Bruno Ferreira chins him in the first round, but A-Bus can definitely win. But yeah, I think Bruno catch him when he's running backwards, knock him out. We move to Mateusz Rębecki versus Myktybek Oralbail. I'm gonna go with Myktybek Oralbail on this one. It is a tricky fight because both Myktybek and Mateusz kind of had weird performances last time out. Both had struggles. Of course, Mateusz actually lost his last fight against Carlos Diego Ferreira. But that fight was really weird. I remember Mateusz's eyes swelling up, and I don't even remember how they swelled up. I think Carlos landed a couple of elbows. The weird issue in this fight is that the striking is going to be very interesting because Mateusz is very explosive. That's where all of his striking comes from. It's very explosive, usually one punch, or he sets it up with the jab because he's a southpaw, so he sets it up with the right and then just uncorks a left overhand. Myktybek is a little bit more reserved. He's more stalking. Both of these guys stalk their opponents, so I'm going to be very interested to see who's going to be on the back foot as this fight goes on. I assume it's going to be Myktybek because Mateusz, or honestly, it might be Mateusz because I think Myktybek's going to try and grapple with Mateusz Rębecki. Myktybek, sorry. I think his grappling, I think he's very strong. I think Mateusz is very strong, but I think Myktybek is very controlling. I think his ground control is going to be very key in this fight. Mateusz Rębecki, you know, the one time we see him face adversity in the UFC, the dude loses his fight. Every other fight in the UFC for Mateusz Rębecki up to that point had been pretty smooth sailing for the most part. I mean, Nick Fiore, he kind of just dominated him. Roosevelt Roberts, he subbed in the first round after getting an early takedown. Loic Radzhabov had basically nothing, and I mean nothing, for Mateusz Rębecki. He fights a veteran like Carlos Diego Ferreira. He wilts under the pressure, man. And his gas tank really showed in that fight that if he fights at a big pace like that, with a lot of striking and the grappling mixed in, but mostly where he's swinging and missing. That's the thing. He's swinging and missing. He's going to gas out. Myktybek has a chin on him. I trust his chin in this fight. Mateusz Rębecki, we've seen him get hurt a little. I mean, Carlos Diego Ferreira hurt him. Myktybek didn't really get hurt against Elvis Brenner. He did get hurt against Uros Medic, but that's up a weight class. And again, I really liked the grappling shown by Myktybek Oralbail in that Uros Medic fight and in the Elvis Brenner fight. Even though he did get reversed, he did end up winning certain positions and getting to dominant positions. I think Myktybek's very strong on the grappling. I like his straight punches. That's what usually gives Mateusz Rębecki issues, is straight counter punches. And Myktybek has pretty solid counters. Mateusz, the first round, he's going to be going at 100 miles per hour. Myktybek's a little more reserved, but he might actually pick up a pace near the end of the round. I think Mateusz Rębecki's going to blow his wad. I think he's going to throw a lot in the first round, miss a lot, maybe land some. But I think Myktybek's going to be able to survive, and I think he's going to win the next 2 rounds, maybe even getting a TKO on the ground over Mateusz Rębecki because he blew out his wad again. I'll go Myktybek Oralbail TKO. Either I'll go 3rd round finish, either late TKO or sub near the middle of the round. We move to Geoff Neal versus Rafael dos Anjos. I'm gonna go with Geoff Neal on this one. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Rafael dos Anjos, especially as of recent, hasn't been the most impressive against higher level competition. I mean, the last guy that he beat was Bryan Barberena. But other than that, in his last 4 fights, he lost to Fiziev, Luque, and Gamrot. Like, don't get me wrong, they're all great fighters. But I've never really liked Rafael dos Anjos up at 170. I don't even know what his record is at 170. I remember when he first got up there, he was pretty good. But, like, as of recent, he's just been kind of flip-flopping between the two, and he's lost a lot at 170. I think Geoff Neal hits pretty hard. Rafael dos Anjos, his chin is he's been knocked out a couple of times in his UFC career. 3 losses by KO. Geoff Neal gave Vicente Luque a brain bleed. I'm going to cross-reference those fights, even though they are 2 different fights. I don't think Rafael dos Anjos is going to be able to offensively grapple Geoff Neal. 1, he's too small and not strong enough. And 2, Geoff Neal has an 88% takedown defense. And I don't think Rafael dos Anjos is going to offer a lot on the feet for Geoff Neal. I think Rafael dos Anjos is slowing down. I think he's older. And I honestly think he's just fighting at 170 because he's old and doesn't want to make 155 anymore. I think after that Mateusz Gamrot fight, he was like, fuck it, I'll just move back up to fucking... I don't get why he's getting this fight. I don't really understand this matchup at all. I think Geoff Neal, his straight shots are very solid. I think Geoff Neal sometimes is a bit too reserved, but I think when he realizes that Rafael dos Anjos, he can kind of get hit with everything, he's going to have a lot of fun in this fight. I think Geoff Neal might be able to work his clinch game a little bit. I think he's going to be way stronger than Rafael dos Anjos. That's about it. He's got the reach advantage. He's going to be bigger. He's younger. He hits hard. I think those are all telltale signs that he's probably going to beat Rafael dos Anjos. So I think the straight punches are key. I think he'll knock out Rafael dos Anjos early in the 2nd round. We move to the featured prelim. Ibo Aslan versus Rafael Cerqueira. Honestly, this is like the first dude I actually don't know how to pronounce his last name because it's nowhere. I'm going to go with Ibo Aslan. This one is a very tricky fight, though. I will admit. Rafael has beat absolutely nobody. But I will say he is technically better than Ibo Aslan. And he's very explosive for light heavyweight. He's a very big dude. But this dude actively throws flying knees, spinning elbows, a lot of specialty shit. He's very explosive. But back to his resume, he's beat literally nobody. He's brought a dude who's 5'9" to the 2nd round. Not Wesley Martins, it was the other dude. Otavio Lacerda. He's 9'8", 5'9", 40 years old, and he brought him to the 2nd round. Almost to the 3rd. I don't know, man. Listen, Ibo Aslan is very sloppy. That is one of the reasons why this is kind of a tricky fight. Ibo Aslan doesn't move his head all that much. He drops his hands in the pocket, just throws wild-ass hooks. His gas tank isn't all that insanely great. Rafael, first fight in the UFC, 34 years old, 11-0. Just started fighting in MMA in 2019, but the thing is, most of his fights are from 2021 on. Literally 10 of his fights are from 2021 onward. He fought twice in 2021, 3 times in 2022, 3 times in 2023, and this will be his 3rd fight in 2024. Very active guy. I also think that the size of the cage is going to play a part in this fight, dude. I don't know if you guys watch Rafael's highlights. A lot of them are very small arenas. It's a very small cage. He's a big dude going up against shorter, fatter, stockier opponents. This is a big-ass cage. He's going to be moving around a lot more. He is explosive. He is technically probably better than Ebo. But I just think Ebo has that dog in him. I think he's got that dog in him. He's the last Ottoman. He's a bit sloppy, but he gets the job done. He lands, and that's what's good. Rafael, dude, sometimes this guy will let that fat fuck, Diaz? He'll let these smaller dudes, like, corral him against the cage. It's in a lot of his fight. He allows them to push him against the cage, and he just takes punch. Takes punch. He takes punishment for no reason. He doesn't really like to counter punch because I think it's because he wants to be defensively sound. But when he's offense, he stalks his opponents. Ebo Aslan, pretty much the same thing. He rarely is on the back foot unless you, like, charge at him. He hits very hard. So does Rafael, to be fair. But I don't think Rafael has a crazy gas tank. And he's been to one decision. I know Ebo Aslan's never been to a decision. But at least he's gone, longer distances and still gotten finishes. Like, he got a couple finishes in the third round. Right? Rafael, he's first and second round only. And those second round fights were against 5'9" opponents, dude. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think Ebo Aslan, I think he's clutch. And also he's a very fun fighter. The Turkalj performance wasn't the craziest, but it's somebody that he's fought. I can't even say the same about Rafael because he hasn't fought anybody. We move to the start of the main card. Sharabutdin Magomedov versus Armen Petrosyan. I wanted to pick Armen so bad, if I'm being honest, because I do think he can beat Shara, but I'm going to go with Sharabutdin Magomedov. I think Armen Petrosyan's really underrated, but I think Sharabutdin, what really helps him in this fight against Armen Petrosyan, because Armen does have wins over some solid guys, like Christian Leroy Duncan, AJ Dobson. I mean, who else did he beat? He beat Gregory Rodriguez. He beat RoboCop. He had a pretty competitive fight with Caio Borralho outside of the grappling. He was outstriking Caio. It's a weird fight, man, because I really think Armen Petrosyan's boxing is pretty superb. And honestly, I think Armen might be able to implement some grappling elements into this fight. But I think, dude, I still don't know, man. Because I think Sharabutdin's pretty beatable. I'm being honest. I think he is pretty fucking beatable. I like his cardio, though. A lot of the success Armen Petrosyan has is due to him being able to outpace and break people down a little bit, like he did against Christian Leroy Duncan, where he did slow down, like he did against AJ Dobson. Shara's gas tank's actually pretty good. His gas tank's pretty good. The pace him and Mikhail Oleksiejczuk had in their fight, on short notice especially, nonetheless, was kind of insane, I'll be honest. It was actually pretty nuts. But what's even way crazier is that Shara's on the back foot for a lot of the fight, and he's still throwing at an insane amount of volume. I mean, he threw, like, over 200 strikes, most of which on the back foot, most of which were kicks. I think Sharabutdin, I think his boxing is improving every fight. It needs to, especially against Armen Petrosyan. I like his kicks to the body. I like his kicks to the legs. I think it's going to help him out in this fight because Armen Petrosyan does mix it up as well. Oh, man, dude, I still don't know, man. Fuck. This one could blow up in my face because if Armen wins, I'm going to be so mad because I wanted to pick him. But I think they're going to find any reason to give this fight to Sharabutdin. I think they're going to find any reason to. I think if he does damage as well. He isn't the most finishing guy in the UFC so far, but he does cause damage. He does cause cuts. He's very precise with his timing. He doesn't really allow himself to get countered as much. I know he got countered in the McCall fight, but besides that, he doesn't really allow himself to get countered in open space. You'll mostly find him getting caught against the fence. It's a bigger cage. Armen hasn't fought in a big cage. Has he ever fought in a arena? In the UFC yet? Where was that Gregory Rodriguez fight? That was in the Apex. Dude, hold up. I don't think Armen... Oh, no, he did fight in a big cage at 280 when he beat AJ Dobson. Okay. And then Kyle, he's had 4 fights in the Apex. Almost his entire career has been... He's like Tatsuro timing type shit. But anyways, I think Sharabutdin, he knows his way around the cage now. I liked his performance against Bruno Silva. I liked his performance against Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. The Antonio Tricoli performance, it's whatever. It was a short notice opponent. You know, it's going to be weird. He's kind of a bigger guy. Armen hasn't fought in a while either. Maybe he's going to be a little rusty, you know. But yeah, this one's a very tricky fight. It could blow up in my face. Sharabutdin Magomedov, unanimous decision. I'll go 29-28. We move to Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. Here you go. Here's your reward for taking that fight on 4 hours' notice, Dan. I'm going to go with Lerone Murphy. I think that what Lerone Murphy does well, he likes to mix it up. He can mix it up very well. His pressure is very good. His striking, he's quite technical on the feet. I love his 1s and 2s. You know, he does kind of overswing on some things, but he's kind of like a Dreykus in a way that when he overswings, it's actually a positive for him because people think that they're out of his way, but he actually has kind of long-ass arms, so he's able to land those overextending shots. I think Dan Ige, at this point in his career, it is kind of his thing to lose to these up-and-coming, not up-and-coming guys, but guys who are starting to solidify their spot in the division. I think Lerone Murphy's performance against Edson Barboza was very good. Besides the up kick and a couple of low kicks, Edson really didn't do anything to Lerone Murphy. And I think Lerone Murphy really showed what he's about in that fight because he got basically knocked out at the end of that first round with that up kick and then went on to absolutely butt-fuck Edson Barboza for the rest of the fight. I think Lerone Murphy, he's able to mix it up well, and those are usually guys that give Dan Ige problems. It's people who can mix up the wrestling with the striking. Like, even a guy who isn't really that great at striking like a Bryce Mitchell was able to mix in the grappling and actually land some things on Dan Ige because Dan Ige is so hyper-focused on defending the takedown. And Lerone Murphy does shoot takedowns here and there. I mean, he averages 2 takedowns essentially per 15 minutes. And also, one of the things I love about Lerone Murphy is his defensive boxing, or just defensive striking in general. I think Lerone Murphy, honestly, is one of the one of the more defensively sound guys in the UFC as of right now. He doesn't really allow himself to get damaged all that much. He's pretty big for the division, 5'9", has longer arms, pretty big frame. Dan Ige, He's got some pop on him. He's got underrated boxing. I think Dan Ige's boxing fundamentals are actually pretty solid. But I think the guys who are competent in the striking are able to mix up the grappling as well. I think those guys are just nightmare matchups for Dan Ige for some reason. The upper echelon guys who can do that, because you got like a guy like Damon Jackson who can somewhat do that, but he has that chin on him, so he can just get knocked out pretty easily. Lerone Murphy's got a chin on him. He's undefeated. You know, and in the Edson Barboza picks and breakdown video, I used that Gabriel Santos performance against him, but now we've seen how good Gabriel Santos is in that recent Yi Jia fight. Honestly, Lerone Murphy, that's actually a win that's aging well now for him. Josh Kulabau, he kind of just out-volumed him or just outlanded him and just landed the better damage. The places we've seen Lerone Murphy struggle a lot is in the grappling, like against Gabriel Santos, or it's Gabriel Santos, right? Yeah, Gabriel Santos, and then Amir Armakwan-Khani, or I just said that name completely wrong. Amir Khani, Akwan Mirkhani, right? Is his first name Akwan? Makwan Amir Khani. He's no longer in the UFC, so I don't need to remember his name, you dickheads. But that first attempt was, oof. I forgot what his first name was. But we've seen guys hold down Lerone Murphy. I don't think Dan Ige's offensive wrestling is good enough to upset a guy like Lerone Murphy. That's what I was getting at with that sentiment about Makwan Amirkhani and Gabriel Santos. But I think Lerone Murphy, he's going to win a comfortable decision because I don't see anyone finishing Dan Ige. The day that somebody finishes Dan Ige, they're going to probably go very far. Like a John Silva, for some reason, I think could possibly do it just because he seemingly has insane power in his hands. Ilia Topuria could probably do it, but I don't think Lerone Murphy has that stopping power in his hands just yet. We move to the featured fight, Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. I'm going to pick Magomed Ankalaev, but here's my opinion about this fight. And I'm going to say this blatantly to you guys. I think Rakic is a better fighter than Magomed Ankalaev. I think technically in the striking, and I think he's actually very well-rounded. I think if you look at actual skill sets, I think Alexander Rakic is one of the more dynamic and probably one of the most well-rounded light heavyweights, probably ever, if I'm being honest. I think that his game is very good. The issue I have with Alexander Rakic is he gets a little squirrely, and I think that's in moments where he gets caught. I said it in UFC 300, I said that the only way he would lose to Yuri Prochazka is if he gets squirrely and he gets clipped in the pocket exchanges. And that's exactly what fucking happened. Alexander Rakic, very technical from the outside, has brilliant leg kicks, brilliant offensive striking. He's one of the more technical guys in the division. Honestly, looked like a world beater against Yuri Prochazka. But he just has these moments where he enters the pocket, he starts to get a little overzealous, and he gets bonked. He gets bonked for it. And the way that he usually tries to survive these situations is clinching and grappling. You're not going to do that against Magomed Ankalaev, dude. And I'll tell you what, Magomed Ankalaev, I've said this for a while now. Everyone sees this dude as a dynamic wrestler. Everyone's like, Magomed's going to wrestle fuck Alex Bahia. He is a striker first. Magomed Ankalaev has dynamite in his fucking fists, dude. He hits very hard. I think a lot of people need to realize that. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, he just grounds and pounds people. Dude, he has so many knockouts in the UFC. He has like one sub in his entire fucking career. He's mostly knocking people the fuck out. And Alexander Rakic, his chin is not great to me for this division. I think that's probably his biggest weakness. And Magomed Ankalaev thrives in those pocket exchanges, dude. He thrives in there. Look at the Johnny Walker fight. Look at the Ion Cutelaba fight. He usually struggles at range with people, which is where Alexander Rakic is going to have a lot of his success. I think Magomed Ankalaev, I think Magomed's going to try and slow him down. He's going to try and clinch him a bit, try and control him a little bit, corral him, make him try and lull him into this fight. But I'm going to tell you what, Rakic is not going to get lulled into that. He's going to explode a lot. He's going to explode so much that he's going to force Magomed to fight in the pocket. But the problem is, that's where Magomed is at his best, on the feet at least, is in the pocket exchanges. He's going to clip Rakic. He's going to end up knocking him out in the middle of the second round. I think that Rakic is a better fighter than Magomed Ankalaev, but I think that he's too squirrely. I think in the pocket he's a little too overzealous and he overswings. And Magomed Ankalaev, when he hits people flush, when he does, he hurts them bad. I don't think Magomed Ankalaev even needs to wrestle Alexander Rakic. All he needs to do is really try and clinch with him, because I don't think he's going to get Rakic down. I think Rakic, honestly, I don't think he's a better grappler than Magomed Ankalaev, but I think it's pretty fucking close, if I'm being honest. I think Rakic, if he had a better chin, I would bet so much money on Alexander Rakic to win this fight. The problem is, he gets clipped in the pocket exchange. If you look at the Jan Blachowicz fight, before he gets the takedown in the first round, he legit gets bonked and then goes for a takedown and gets it. You're not getting Magomed Ankalaev down, dude. You're just not. What's Magomed's takedown defense even? Actually, it might be kind of poop, because I don't think he's been 86% takedown defense. Yeah, he's not getting taken down. And another thing, I really like Magomed's defense. I think his defense is all right. I think that Magomed should lose skill for skill, I think Rakic is the better fighter. I just think that with a certain couple extremities added, not extremities, another like other factors, when you factor in other things like chin, like overzealousness, I think Rakic is just kind of like a guy that Magomed can knock out. So I think this is the fight that Magomed finally cements himself as the number one, as he should be. Even though Khalil put up a good fight, it should have been Magomed fighting him. I don't care. Dude, Khalil Roundtree Rakic would have been so fucking fun. Do not tell me you wouldn't love to see that fight. That fight would have been badass. We just see Khalil get bullied for the last 2 rounds. But yeah, this fight, it's either going to be like that, or Magomed's actually able to hold Rakic against the cage for the whole time. I don't think so, but I don't know. Rakic is a weird guy, but Magomed Ankalaev, 2nd round TKO, lock it in. We move to the co-main event. Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. Oh, man. I'm going to go with Khamzat Chimaev. I think Robert can beat him. I think Khamzat's going to get it done, though. I am terrified of this being a 5-round fight, picking Khamzat. If you pick Robert Whittaker, you are with the mindset that he survives the early onslaught and TKOs Khamzat in the later rounds. That is the mindset you're having. I think Khamzat can get Robert Whittaker out of there early in the first 2 rounds. Robert, I'll tell you what, I don't think he subs him. I don't think Khamzat, I almost said Kamaru, Jesus. We need Kamaru fucking Usman fight news, dude. I don't think Khamzat subs him. I think he TKOs him. And here's my thing. Like I've said before, I think Robert Whittaker is the hardest, easiest top 5 guy to beat. I think Robert Whittaker, skill-wise, is probably in the top, 3 or 2 of the entire division. When you look at his skill set, the problem is he's easily rocked, and also it's usually a pace that'll get to him. If you look back at that Dricus Duplessis fight, Dricus really succeeded when he was the one going forward. Robert Whittaker, and I'll tell you what, Robert Whittaker, brilliant takedown defense, brilliant this, brilliant that, very good striker. He sets his things up very well. He makes very good reads. If you look at the Ikram Aliskerov fight, he forced him to lift that leg up. He kept seeing that whenever he would enter in, Ikram would lift it up, and then he bonked him for it. I think Khamzat Chimaev defensively is pretty sound. I don't think he's really KO'able, at least. We've seen Gilbert Burns drop him, but that was because Khamzat was just going in like a goober. I think Khamzat's a little more reserved now. We saw that in the Usman fight in moments. I think that nobody wrestles the way Khamzat Chimaev does. I think nobody wrestles the way he does. I don't think anyone grapples the way he does. I don't think anyone rolls the way he does. I think Khamzat Chimaev is a different tier of pace and pressure as a wrestler than anybody else. We've seen that. The only guy, besides Gerald Mearshart, because Gerald Mearshart got fucking knocked out in 17 seconds, the only guy that even had a bit of success against Khamzat is Gilbert Burns. I don't know. That sentence is all over the place. Because Khamzat didn't like the jiu-jitsu of him. We seen Khamzat Chimaev ragdoll Kamaru Usman for a full round. I think Kamaru Usman is a better wrestler than Robert Whittaker. I don't think that's a very, very stupid take to have. Maybe defensive wrestling, who knows? We haven't really seen anyone pull up on Robert Whittaker like that since Yoel Romero. But that was ages ago, man. That was so long ago. I don't think Roberts had to defend takedowns like this in a hot minute, man. Khamzat is going to burn the gas in the first 2 rounds. He is. And if it goes to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I will tell you this, Robert will find a finish. But I just imagine Khamzat Chimaev going in there and either knocking him out on the feet, because Khamzat does have power. He does. Don't say he doesn't. He does have power. Or he ground and pound TKOs him. He kind of flattens him out, gets back mount, starts to flatten him out, and just starts teeing off on his head, puts him in a position where he can't really move. It's kind of a weird stoppage because you can tell like Robert isn't hurt, but he just can't move. It's kind of like a Roman Dolidze, Jack Hermanson type of thing where Jack just really can't move. I think Khamzat can do that. I'm a humongous Khamzat fan. Maybe he had a bad weight cut. We just saw that. He was the last to weigh in. It was like minutes left. He was the last guy to show up. But I think that he can get it done against Robert Whittaker. And Robert Whittaker can get it done against him. If this was a 3-round fight, I would confidently be picking Khamzat Chimaev. But since it's 5 rounds, I do think Robert Whittaker has an even better chance of winning. In a 3-round fight, I think it's pretty clear that Khamzat would probably win. I think that Robert Whittaker, if he has this sort of pace put on him, we see it with everybody Khamzat fights. It's not like he's the only one that slows down. His opponents also slow down too. It's not like he's the only guy. Gilbert Burns slowed down. Kamaru Usman slowed down. Hell, in that Gilbert Burns fight, in that 3rd round, Khamzat still had enough power to rock him. I know that's Gilbert Burns, but it's like, is Gilbert and Robert Whittaker's chins really like that crazy different? You know what I mean? Like Gilbert does get rocked, but I mean, Robert Whittaker's been rocked by almost everybody in his last 8 fights. So, I think Khamzat Chimaev can get it done. It is a very interesting matchup. I can't wait to watch it. Can't wait to watch it at 5 p.m., by the way. My day is fucking... I hate how early the Abu Dhabi cards are, but I mean, I don't hate it, because it's like I don't have to stay up for them, but it's kind of weird how it's like midday and they're over, but... I'll go Khamzat Chimaev. I'll go 1st or 2nd round TKO. Lock it in. We move to the main event. Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I am still undecided. I'm going to go with Max Holloway, but this fight is probably going to be the most nerve-wracking fight of the year. I don't know what it is about the pay-per-views this year. The main event of every one has always been kind of nerve-wracking a little bit. This one is probably up there. I felt the same way during the Pereira versus Roundtree fight. This one's even worse. This fight is so goddamn interesting, but I think that Max Holloway's volume and Ilia Topuria's lack of respect for his opponents are going to lead to his downfall in this fight. Here's my thing. Max Holloway is not going to get knocked out, in my humble opinion. I don't think Ilia Topuria is going to do that. If there's any fight where it's going to happen, it's definitely this fight, because Max is coming down from 155, probably had a strenuous weight cut, but he made the weight. If there's any fight that it's going to happen, it's going to be this one. This is probably the only time we have a chance of seeing Max Holloway get knocked out. I think Ilia Topuria is patient to a T, and I think he only throws whenever he has people corralled against the cage or it's a leg kick in the center. You will rarely see Ilia Topuria press forward on his own ambition in the center of the cage. I think Max Holloway can hold the center very well. I don't think Max Holloway allows himself to get pressured as easy as some people say he does. And Ilia Topuria's main success happened against the cage. That is where he thrives. He is a cage merchant. He has to cut off the cage to get you against there, to corral you, to initiate clinches, and then to land his boxing combinations. I think at range, Max Holloway is going to have a decent time with Ilia Topuria. They say they have the same reach. It's just a lie. Ilia Topuria has shorter arms than Max Holloway. It's just because he's wider. That's it. I think Max Holloway, one of the biggest weapons of Ilia Topuria is calf kick. A lot of people don't really rate Ilia Topuria. I think he honestly has a very devastating leg kick. I don't think those really work on Max Holloway, because here's the thing, he is there to get leg kicked, and he can get leg kicked, but it's just like, it doesn't affect him. For some reason, Max Holloway has very thick calves. I don't know why, but it just doesn't really affect him as much. I think Max Holloway's own leg kicks and knee stomps himself will work on Ilia Topuria, because he is so heavy on that lead leg that if you try and take that away from him, you might be able to have some success. And my thing is, if Ilia Topuria is not knocking out Josh Emmett, I don't think he's knocking out Max Holloway. I do understand Ilia can definitely win this fight. That's why I'm so undecided on it. Because here's the thing. I think Ilia Topuria, the rounds are going to be close. But here's the thing. I think Ilia is probably going to have the coolest moment of almost every round. He's probably going to land something big. It's going to have a huge reaction from the crowd. It's going to sound like a cannon. But the thing is, Max Holloway is going to be outstriking him by like 10 punches, by like 10 to 15 strikes per round, because he just throws so much. And Ilia Topuria, I think he's going to resort to grappling. I think he's going to go to his Greco-Roman base and try and look for takedowns in those middle frames. I don't think he can strike with Max. I don't think Max Holloway can strike with Ilia Topuria for 25 minutes. I think both these guys are going to need to initiate clinches for themselves to save some time, to save face, to just kind of slow down things. But I hate this fight, because I like both of these guys. I know it seems like I don't like Ilia, because I've been saying that I think Max beats him. I don't. It may seem like I don't like Ilia. I think he's a cool guy. I like what he's doing for the division. Because here's the thing: if Ilia Topuria goes out there and knocks out Max Holloway and does all these things he's saying he's going to do, we have a super villain on our fucking hands. Because Ilia Topuria will not only knock out Alexander Volkanovski, if he KOs Max fucking Holloway, who can take a punch from him at that point? Who's going to be able to do it? My issue is Ilia Topuria sometimes overswings on things, but then the thing is like Max Holloway's defense, like he doesn't cover up his head, he kind of backs up the same way Volk does. And Ilia Topuria lands those overreaching shots because you think you're out of range, but he kind of tags you with them. Fuck. I think Max Holloway's going to struggle to get to the body of Ilia Topuria. I think he'll find his way through with his teeps to the body. I think Max Holloway's going to throw quite a few of those. I think he's going to alternate between teeps to the body, leg kicks, a jab. I don't think Max Holloway's jabs and straights to the body are going to be as effective, because Ilia Topuria has that shorter frame where he's hunched over and he's kind of got that, what's that boxing term? It's like shield or something, where you lean and you guard your body because you have shorter arm, or you hunch over and you got your elbows are low enough. Ilia Topuria is very good at that, but I think the jab of a Max Holloway and straight punches to the face are going to be on one, because Ilia Topuria, I'll say this about him, like I said, I don't think he respects his opponents. I don't think he really cares if he gets hit. He does get hit a bit, but the thing is Max Holloway also gets hit a lot. But I think Max Holloway can make Ilia miss. If Bryce Mitchell was able to make him miss, and here's the thing, Volkanovski, people will look at that Volkanovski fight and be like, oh, Volkanovski got washed. Honestly, he was landing a lot of shit on Ilia Topuria. It was up until the point where he just kind of got corralled and he allowed himself to get backed up against the fence, and then he got knocked out. That's the thing. I don't think Max Holloway is going to allow himself to get pushed back as much. But still, anything can fucking happen. If there's a fight where we have a chance of seeing Max Holloway get knocked out, it's this one. I personally don't see it. I think the scorecards are going to be very close, because I think it goes to decision. I think it's going to be 48-47, split decision Max Holloway, because like I said, I think Ilia Topuria is going to have big moments, but I think a lot of people are going to get drowned out by the moments where Max Holloway is throwing 15 strikes and Ilia Topuria is thrown 2. So I think Max Holloway, and the thing is he's been working on, his cardio, not his cardio, but he's been lessening his load a little bit. He hasn't been throwing as much, but he still throws quite a bit. And we know Max can go 5 rounds. We've only seen Ilia go 5 rounds once against Josh Emmett, and that was a fight where he controlled the pace the entire time. Let's see how he likes when the pace is not controlled by him. Let's see how he deals with it. Let's see how he deals when he can't just walk someone down the entire time. I think that Max Holloway I don't think he'll break Ilia Topuria, but I think there will be moments where we see Ilia start to fade, but then that mentality that he has will kick in and he won't allow himself to quit. So he'll try and walk forward, he'll get tagged up with a couple of jabs, but he'll land that one big right hand, and everyone will be like, oh, Ilia's back into it, and then we'll get back to regular scheduled programming of teeps to the body, a little knee stomp here and there for Max Holloway. Maybe he does throw the spinning back kick. I think if Ilia Topuria wins this fight, he's going to have to grapple. I don't think his mentality will allow himself to do that because he's talked so much shit about how he wants to knock out Max Holloway, or maybe he's doing the thing that Jan Blachowicz did where he's just lying out of his ass. Ilia can win this fight. I think his game plan is going to make it faulty. I think that he can win. He should win. Not he should win, but he has a very good chance of beating Max Holloway, but I think his actual game plan that he has on the night of the fight won't be good enough. And I think Max Holloway will slightly edge it out with his volume, his shots to the body. I think Ilia will slow down, and as the rounds go on, I think that barrier is going to start to break, and we're going to see a little bit of a momentum shift from that first 2 to 3 rounds, and Max Holloway is going to start picking up the pace, and Ilia is going to slow down and not be able to defend as much. I'll go Max Holloway 48-47 split decision and new. I'm UFC Thoughts. These have been my picks and breakdown for every fight on UFC 308. Topuria vs. Holloway on October 26, 2024. My confident picks reside with Kennedy and Nzechukwu, Bruno Ferreira, and Geoff Neal. My pre-card rating is a 10 out of 10. This card is fucking nuts, man. I cannot wait for UFC 308. Every fight on this card has the chance to be really fucking good, man. The main card especially is just riddled with matchups that just are fucking nail-biting, dude. I can't wait for the main event, of course. I think it's probably the most interesting matchup of the year between Ilia and Max Holloway. Robert Whittaker Khamzat is just going to be a matchup made in heaven. I can't wait to see that. I can't wait to see how Khamzat does. Because honestly, if he loses to Robert, then it is what it is. But if he has a very wild fight with Robert, then maybe he still has a chance. Magomedov versus Rakic, banger fight. Murphy, Ige, banger. Magomedov, the Cyclops. Then you got some other guys on here. Geoff Neal, Ibo Aslan, Myktybek, Abus Magomedov, Bruno Ferreira, Chris Barnett. Woo. I cannot wait for this card, man. I am so fucking happy. And I'll see you guys after the fights. Peace.